You are listening to the Keep the Weight Off podcast with Dr. Angela, episode number 59.
Welcome to the Keep the Weight Off podcast, where we bust all the dieting myths and discover not just how to lose weight, but more importantly, how to keep it off. We go way beyond the food, and we use science and psychology to give you strategies that work. And now your host, Dr. Angela Zechmann.
So, hey everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast. Hey Marchelle, how are things with you today?
They're okay. I'm struggling a little bit with allergies because there's a lot of pollen in the air.
Yes,
where I live, and it's all over my car. I am really sensitive to pollen, so if my voice sounds a little weird, it's because
that's why
I'm struggling with that.
Yeah.
So how are you doing, Angela?
I'm doing okay. A lot going on, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah. All right.
So I had a really interesting week, this last week has really emphasized to me the power of habits. And I wanted to talk about that today. And in the Empowered Weight Loss membership, we are talking about habits. March is Habit Month. And we've been discussing the habit loop, which I'm going to talk to you about, and learning how to apply it so that we can set ourselves up for success with lasting weight loss by working on our routines and our habits. But here's what happened to me last week. My beloved Aunt Sally, who turned 90 in December, had a stroke. Now, she's just a cute little thing. She probably weighs 90 pounds. She's my mother's sister, and everybody at the hospital loves her. She had a stroke, though, and she's weak on the left side. She's in a rehab hospital, and she's working diligently every day to recover as much function as possible. Now, she was planning to move to Minnesota in mid-March, right? Which is right about now. But and she had sold her house, and we were planning to go down and help her move. Well, now that she's had the stroke, she could do nothing. So we went down early and stayed in her house in Arizona and packed everything up for her. And my partner, Siggy, single-handedly loaded 5,000 pounds of her belongings onto a pod while I did all the sorting and packing. So it was just all, I know, go Siggy. It was just a lot of work to do. And I was completely out of my normal routine. And I mean, completely out of my normal routine. So usually I meditate and I work out every morning. I did get in a few meditations, but there was no working out. I usually plan and I eat regular meals. None of that happened. I was just grabbing ham and cheese and nuts and protein bars whenever I got hungry. And so I wanted to talk about this, how our brain works with habits. There's something called the habit cycle, and there's several different pieces of the habit cycle. The first part of the habit cycle is a cue. So a cue can be something that we see. It could be a certain time of day. It could be a certain activity that we're already engaged in, something like that. So there's the cue. The next part of the habit cycle is the routine. And the routine can be a series of like little minute movements. Think about when you're driving your car, all the little movements, or maybe you're taking a shower or you're brushing your teeth. You're not really paying any attention at all when you get into a car and turn on the ignition and put the car in reverse and back out of your parking spot. It's all automatic. You just do it automatically under the surface of your conscious awareness. That's how the brain saves energy. It automates any kind of routine task. The last part of the habit cycle is the reward. For example, getting to your destination, or after your shower, you're feeling clean, or having a clean mouth after brushing your teeth. There's a reward. So this is how our brains work. It's how we evolve to save as much energy as possible. we put as much of our routines on autopilot so we don't have to pay attention to every little piece of information and we can keep our eye out for danger, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I have all these routines on autopilot at home. Waking up, brushing my teeth, getting my coffee, meditating, working out, showering, eating breakfast. But staying at my Aunt Sally's, there were none of the usual cues. It was so interesting. My brain was in a quandary. Nothing was where it usually is. And the fact that we were packing things and changing the environment constantly just confused my brain even more. So no cues means no instructions to my brain to go into the habit routine. So I spent the entire week working hard, both physically, but more importantly, mentally, because it took so much extra mental energy to be constantly adapting like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It kind of reminds me of when we had this remodel done in our kitchen.
Uh-huh.
And our
I remember that.
Right. And we struggled so much because, you prep and then we all know prepping is the most important part of eating, right? And we couldn't do that because we didn't have a refrigerator. We had nothing in our kitchen.
Yeah.
And it threw us off so much because there's only so many places to eat in our small town. And that, especially when you're trying to stick to your routine, and there were no cues because we didn't have a kitchen. So, I just remember how much we struggled for those it was like 3 months.
Yeah.
And we just got way off track and we struggled a lot. And I know that we talked to you a lot about how to get through that time period. Because it was just really frustrating. So, you just it's just hard when you don't have the cues that you're talking about that just keep you in your routine. So definitely understandable. This all makes sense.
I was just really surprised because, since we are really focusing on habits, during this month of March in our membership, I was really surprised to just watch my brain just sort of go nuts. I was really irritable. Everything just felt so hard. It was like, oh my gosh. So I wanted to bring this up because for our podcast listeners, I want you to know how important the cues are. If you're moving or you're traveling or life is unstable for you for some reason, please give yourself a break. Did you hear me beating myself up about any of this? I bet I did not. Okay. I just knew wow, my brain is really having a hard time adjusting to this. And your brain needs a stable routine and will thrive on a stable routine. But if something happens to destabilize things, you're going to have a much more difficult time sticking to your routines. That's just all there is to it. Kitchen remodel. Yeah. House remodel. Move. Anything that destabilizes your normal routines is going to cause you to falter. Now, the other thing that I want you to know is that you can retrain your brain to develop new habits at any time. Our daily routines, the things that we do day in and day out, are what creates our results for us. There's a great book, I've mentioned it before. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear, that explains the habit cycle in detail and explains how it is that small things done consistently over time create amazing results. But the consistency is the key. Being consistent, not wishy-washy, but consistent. So I would encourage our listeners to think about your daily routines and the results that you're getting from your daily routines. Is there anything in your daily routine that's not getting you the results that you want? For example, a caramel macchiato every morning that you might go pop into Starbucks or whatever your favorite coffee place is. That would be a habit that is not helping you on your weight loss journey. So tease that habit out. What's the cue? What's the routine? What's the reward? Sometimes it's interesting because what you might think the cue is might not be the actual cue. we were talking with a gal in the Empowered Weight Loss membership on our coaching call, and she thought her cue was TV, but it turned out it wasn't TV. It was very specific TV programs that were a cue for her to go and get peanut butter to eat while she was watching. Not all TV, just certain programs. So that was interesting. So I would suggest whatever your habit routine is that you want to change, get really deliberate about figuring out, well, what actually is the cue for you? Okay, what's the cue? What's the routine? And what's the reward at the end? And sometimes all it takes is removing the cue. As I found out last week, all my good habits got extinguished when I didn't have the cue. But if you have a bad habit, could be all you need to do is remove the cue and you can extinguish the habit. So last week for me, there was no cue for exercise. So I didn't exercise. Although you could say that packing and moving boxes is plenty of exercise. You could say that. But I didn't have my usual routine. I didn't have my usual meditation chair. So I didn't meditate regularly. I did meditate a little bit, but not regularly. I forgot to take my contacts out at night a few times. So extinguishing a habit that's not serving you can actually be relatively easy if you just eliminate the cue. Okay.
I'm going to jump in really quick because I was just thinking of this. So I know a lot of people drink Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I did too.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, so one of the ways that I had to remove the cue was I had to drive a different route.
Yeah.
Because I would drive past it on my way to work every morning. Mm-hmm. So it was hard for me to get rid of the cue because I was driving past it every morning. So one way for me to remove that was I'd have to take a different route home.
Yeah.
Not a different route home, a different route to work. To work. And home. Because it was the same thing. But I didn't want coffee in the afternoon. I only wanted it in the morning.
Yeah.
So, but I would have to take a different route. And so that was just one of the ways I remember having to remove that cue.
Yeah, that's a really good example. I love that. One of our patients told us that after she retired, she didn't have to get up early. So she'd stay up late at night watching TV. It wasn't until after her husband went to bed, and that seemed to be the cue for her, she'd go get some food to snack on while she was watching TV.
Oh, I'd definitely have done that.
Yeah. And I really do feel like TV is a cue for a lot of people to eat.
Oh, for sure.
And I would like to say that if you're watching network TV, oftentimes it's because there are all kinds of ads for processed foods. And that will be a cue to eat. So that's really, really common. So that's something that you might want to think about. Can you eliminate the cue? What this particular woman decided to do was to stop watching TV and read a book instead. Reading a book was not a cue for her to eat. So she stopped eating and got back to losing weight. Isn't that interesting, huh? She was just sitting there flipping through, it wasn't like she was watching any particular show. She was just sort of entertaining herself and relaxing in the evening. So reading a book was a fine activity for her and was not a cue for eating. So that worked really well. Okay. So that's how you can eliminate habits that are not serving you. And of course, I do want to say if it's a habit where your brain is getting a sugar hit, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. I mean, eliminating the cue is going to be the first step, but it's going to be challenging to get through the sugar withdrawal. So be sure, if you haven't already done it, join us in Sugar and Flour Busters Society. That's our Facebook group, so we can help you with that. Make sure that you get the sugar detox menu, and that can help you with that as well. Now, let's turn this around, and let's say that you have a habit that you want to get started, like a new habit that will serve you. So many people want to start a regular exercise routine. Now, remember, I always teach you don't exercise to lose weight. You lose weight so you can exercise. But exercise is really, really good for you. And it's a habit that gives you mental stability, and it keeps your muscles strong, and it keeps insulin resistance at bay. So yeah, I'm all for exercise. But what I want you to understand is that for any habit that you want to start, always work first at being consistent about it. Don't work at intensity. In other words, don't work too hard. Work at being consistent. So, for example, it's pretty classic that people will join a gym in January and then give it all up by February. And the reason is that they're working with too much intensity in the beginning. Like, I see them sign up for full on 3 days a week, hardcore boot camps. And that's just not going to work long term. You have to build the consistency first. So just work at getting yourself to the gym for 5 minutes. Just work at being consistent, at just getting yourself to the gym and get on a treadmill for 5 minutes and then leave. That's all you got to do. Make it easy and be consistent about it. Give yourself some sort of a reward at the end, a little dopamine hit by saying out loud to yourself in the car, maybe after you're on your way home, "You're awesome. You are totally awesome. You did it." Give yourself a dopamine hit. Congratulate yourself for a job well done and congratulate yourself for your consistency. And then once you've managed to develop a consistent habit, then you can add the intensity to it. The longer workouts, the more intense workouts, but always work at the consistency first. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. And always, when you're learning, always be kind to yourself. Don't get too hard on yourself.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about your daily routines. I am going to conclude with a quote from James Clear. I already mentioned him, the author of Atomic Habits. And this is his quote from when he was speaking to Brené Brown on her podcast. And he said, "The difference between eating a burger and fries for lunch every day or eating a salad on any given day is pretty insignificant. Your body looks the same in the mirror at the end of the night. The scale hasn't really changed. It's only 2 or 5 or 10 years later that you're like, oh, those daily choices really do add up." It's kind of like you go through your daily routine and then 3 years later, it's like, knock, knock, who's there? Oh, the consequences of my past decisions.
Exactly.
It's like, turns out that stuff creeps up on you.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
Yeah. That's James Clear. That's not me. So I'm still reading his quote. He said,
That's funny.
Yeah. He says, "I think that we feel that in so many different ways, in so many different areas in life. And so that pattern of what starts out small and seems relatively insignificant grows and accumulates into something bigger. We see it again and again, and I think we all know this. We have all felt this just from going through life, and it's a double-edged sword. Your habits can either build you up or cut you down. And I think that's a strong reason, a good argument for why you want to understand what they are and how they work and how to design them so that you can be the architect of your habit and not the victims of them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So become the architect of your habits. In other words, you decide what results you want, and then you get busy figuring out, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to train my brain for this? How can I start small and be consistent and accumulate that habit over time and accumulate the results over time? Cool, huh? Mm-hmm. So then you get to live the life and have the results that you want, and you're not the victim of unconscious habits. Very cool. I love James Clear, by the way, just so you know. He's my hero. One of my heroes. All right, everyone. That's all for today. We go into all of this in much more detail in the Empowered Weight Loss membership. And if you're interested in joining us, it starts with the Done With Dieting Bootcamp. All you have to do is go to JourneyBeyondWeightLoss.com, and you'll see a tab there for the bootcamp to sign up, and we will see you on the inside. And I hope you'll join us. It's great. It's a lot of fun. So take care, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye now.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, if you really want to lose weight and keep it off for good, your next step is to sign up for Dr. Angela's free weight loss course, where you're going to learn everything you need to get started on your weight loss journey the right way. Just head over to journeybeyondweightloss.com/free course to sign up. Also, it would be awesome if you could take a few moments and write a review on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you in Journey Beyond Weight Loss.